And just like that, we've got fresh new recruiting news to talk about with the Duke basketball program. A target has moved his official visit up sooner rather than later. Is this big news for Duke basketball?
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man. The Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us today on Tuesday, August 26th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. We're talking a lot today about the Duke basketball team and some recruiting news that has transpired over the last few days. We'll dive into that with our pal Kevin Connelly, who's here from Ball Durham. Also talk about Duke football game week arriving here for the 2025 season. That is super, super exciting. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, make sure that you follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. We're on Instagram and TikTok as well for social media platforms. And then our big push that we've been having. Appreciate all the love that we're getting each and every day on YouTube. A special shout out to our YouTube everydayers who watch us each and every day. Over this past weekend, we were able to celebrate that big milestone. We now have over 4,000 subscribers within the Locked On Blue Devils community, and it's all thanks to you guys. Really appreciate your support each and every day for being a part of this. If you have not done so yet, go ahead and subscribe, as we've got more milestones now that we get to pursue and chase together. So a special shout out to all of you guys. So without further ado, a man who needs very little introduction. He's here all the time. One of my good friends, Kevin Connelly, is here with us. And Kevin, do owe you a big thanks as well, as we have surpassed 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. You were here with me before this was even on YouTube, when this was just the audio podcast that Locked On had. So you've been here for the entire journey, my friend. And 1,000 subscribers by 1,000 subscribers by 1,000 subscribers. Let's keep climbing this thing together, man.
JJ, congratulations. I'm happy for you, man. The friendship we built over this podcast, you do an incredible job every single day. So 4,000, it's a big number, and I hope to be here for 5,000 as well.
Yeah, let's keep on going. Let's keep chasing that next milestone. Let's keep chasing Duke basketball, as sooner by sooner we'll get here to this upcoming season. Sooner by sooner. That's terrible. I'm off to a bad start here. But nonetheless, big news. Austin Goosby has moved up his official visit. This was one of the big recruiting targets that honestly we've talked about for quite some time. Everydayers will know Brandon Jenkins, a national recruiting insider who's on the show all the time, told us a while ago, even before the summer started, Austin Goosby's a player who's going to soar through these rankings, and Duke really likes. And here we are now sit today. He's going to go on a visit starting tomorrow in Durham. This is crazy, the momentum that's here.
Yeah, you know, JJ, I think one thing is really interesting, and I'll get to my point about recruiting as a whole a little bit later. But when you have these players, now Austin Goosby right now in the latest 247 sports rankings is a fringe top 30 player. In the 247 sports rankings, he's 31. And then in the composite rankings, he's 28. So he's kind of just on the edge of that 5-star ranking. He is a 4-star. But it feels like when Duke goes after these players in the general area of where he is ranked, they typically land these guys. You look at guys like Con Knippel. Con Knippel, at least when Duke started recruiting him, he was not this can't-miss, going to be a top 5 NBA draft pick after his freshman season. You look at a guy on like the current roster, like a Nick Hemenia. He was not like this top 2 or top 3 player in his recruiting rankings, but Duke goes and gets him. The list goes on and on and on for different players like this. But for Austin Goosby, you look at a guy like TJ Power a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He was off the radar, had a great couple of summers, and all of a sudden found himself as a 5-star prospect. So I'm expecting Austin Goosby, whenever the next rankings come out for some of these recruiting sites, to be a 5-star, to be a top 20, probably pushing top 15 prospect overall. And like I said, when Duke goes after these types of recruits, they have a pretty high success rate of landing them in Durham.
I'm excited to see how he would fit in that Duke uniform. And just I think the fact that he has moved this up. The visit was originally scheduled to take place in early October. Now it's this week. Joe Tipton from On3 put out there in his reporting, one of the big reasons Goosby wanted to move this up is that this week we will see the start of Devil Pro Week, where a number of former Duke basketball players in this yearly event return to work with and mentor current Blue Devils in Cameron and there in Durham. So I think, one, that means we're about to have a lot of content coming out from Duke basketball with a number of NBA guys returning this week to be around the team. We love it each and every year when we get that stuff. Obviously, Duke likely will not have too much content with Austin Goosby because that's not the norm when you've got these NCAA recruits there. But he'll be in the mix. He'll get to see a lot of these guys. And so in that essence, man, when Jon Scheyer's picking up the phone and says, hey, I'd rather you be here now so you can meet a lot of our former guys and the pros, you see a guy surging, maybe Goosby projects as a multi-year player. I think that is a great move by Jon Scheyer to get him in and be around the culture of Duke basketball. Like, this is what it really means to be a Duke Blue Devil and a part of the brotherhood. Look at all these guys coming back.
Well, JJ, I guess I'm going to call it the fall, right? I know we're still at the end of August. You're bordering on that end of back to school. Is it summer? Is it fall? But I'm going to say in the fall, I'm going to categorize this as fall. When you're Duke, you want recruits on campus for 1 or 2 different weekends. You want them on campus for, like you said, this weekend where all the pros come back and they're starting to get their bodies back in NBA training camp shape and they're working out there. And just to see all the different NBA players that Duke has developed within the last 5 to 7 years when they come back on campus. And then obviously the other one is Countdown to Craziness weekend, where the students are back. Everybody's hyped for basketball season. Cameron finally has that first real raucous environment for the first time since late February, early March, the final regular season game of the season. So those are the 2 big recruiting weekends for Duke. And typically when they have recruits on campus for those weekends, like I said, their hit rate, their success rate is pretty high when it comes to landing those prospects. So it's certainly exciting for Duke. I do have to imagine they like where they are with Austin Goosby. I think a lot of other people like where Duke is with Austin Goosby. But, as we say in recruiting, nothing is official until the player gets on campus for his freshman season. Kind of like we just saw this past year with Shelton Henderson pulling out. I guess that was mid-May, end of May. So, it's interesting. And that kind of builds on my other point with recruiting. I think recruiting I think it's lost a little bit of its luster. And I talked about this on your show, at least for other programs, not specifically Duke, because we mentioned how Jon Scheyer still wants to have these high-profile elite freshman talents in his program. But especially these past 2 recruiting cycles, when you're coming off of generational type talent in guys like Cooper Flagg and obviously Cam Boozer, and throw in guys like AJ DeBonsa and Darren Peterson, naturally there's going to be a drop-off because you can't expect 2026, 2027, 2028 to have guys like that who are supposed to be franchise cornerstones for NBA teams in the near future. And then you look at the transfer portal, how dependent some programs have been on that. I think recruiting, in a sense, has lost a little bit of its luster. But certainly for Duke, who goes after these highly sought-after high school prospects, it's still certainly a major talking point.
Without a doubt, when the best players in the country want to come play for your school, it's really hard to say, we're okay. We don't want you here. But that's been the case for Duke over the last several seasons, and it continues to be the case. So Austin Goosby is soaring through the rankings. I've got one more thought to make on Austin Goosby, and we'll talk about next year's kind of roster, early thoughts and whatnot, as Duke builds this recruiting class here in a moment. That's coming up next. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Rugiet. That's right, Rugiet, a sponsor here on the program. You've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that could take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You got to love that it's completely online, as Rugiet connects you with the board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing review. Please visit Rugiet website for full safety information. Rugiet is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, Kevin is here. We're talking Duke basketball. Austin Goosby moves up his official visit by about a month. It was going to be early October. Now it's going to be here at the end of August. Expected to be in Durham Wednesday through Friday of this week. And a lot of former NBA players, a part of the Duke basketball family, are expected to be back in town. Goosby has already had visits to SMU and Miami. He's also scheduled to visit Texas, Baylor, and BYU. So we'll see how far this thing goes. I like this quote, though, kind of reading more about Austin Goosby. Over the summer, in an interview with Rivals, asking to describe his game, Austin Goosby said, quote, "I'm an overall scorer. I can facilitate, create for other players, and I like getting my teammates involved. I'm talking more on the court, getting my teammates where they need to be, just communicating in general. I'll be looking for a school that communicates well, someone who reaches out a lot and keeps me involved, just a school that is like a family where I have a relationship with and I can trust the coaches," end quote. That was over a month ago, and you just heard Austin Goosby say he likes a school that communicates it well, treats me like I'm a part of the family, and keeps me involved in what's going on. Is that not exactly what Jon Scheyer is doing here?
Yeah, it sounds like it. Certainly sounds like it. You mentioned some of the other schools that are after him. Obviously, NIL does play a lot in these decisions.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how much money BYU now has in their basketball program, just looking at their roster for this upcoming season. So, yes, it's certainly the prestige. It's certainly the connection among teammates and those who have come through the program. But recruits don't say it publicly on the record. But the amount of NIL money that they can get from a certain school also plays a lot into their decision.
Without a doubt. So we'll see how this continues to move forward here for Duke with Austin Goosby. It does seem that Duke might be kind of cooling off of the Brandon McCoy Jr. sweepstakes a little bit, the number 3 overall player in the country, right behind Jordan Smith Jr. Keep in mind, Jordan Smith and Brandon McCoy have already been on official visits to Duke. They went as juniors. Right now, they currently have set up their fall schedule to take another official visit to Duke, because in the ever-changing landscape, you can do things like that. So we'll see how all of this goes. But I think a point you were making a little bit ago, Kevin, was just, things are changing, and Duke has kind of always taken the best players in the country. But when it's a class that doesn't have the headliners like these previous two, maybe the approach here in 2026 is to truly look at the transfer portal and some options that might be there at the end of this season.
No, it certainly can be. And I think it's way too soon to obviously forecast who's going to be in the transfer portal a year from now, or I guess not a year from now, 8-9 months from now. But with Jordan Smith Jr., obviously that's Duke's number 1 target. I mean, they want him. They've been on him basically since he's been a freshman, and they feel like they're in really good position to land him. But JJ, this past offseason, they didn't add a transfer, a high-impact scholarship player transfer. Obviously, go back to last offseason, they added guys like Malik Brown and Sion James and Mason Gillis, but that wasn't the case this season. So I do think Jon Scheyer seems like he has a game plan of what he wants to do going into the offseason, and could that be getting international players that make themselves available like Dame Sarr, or could that be a Sion James in the transfer portal? Obviously, he knows what he wants to do. A Sebastian Wilkins, a reclass candidate, but certainly he does have a plan, and maybe adding more transfer portal players this upcoming offseason in April and May is certainly part of his game plan.
because we've got, again, a scholarship look here on the screen for those watching on YouTube. 15 per year is our new kind of NCAA metric here. Duke right now only using 13 of their 15 scholarships. They've got spots to award them to walk-ons and that sort of thing here in the program. But looking at next year, you expect certain people to not be here, right? Like, obviously, you're losing Malik Brown, Jack Scott, the transfer that Duke got from the Ivy League from Princeton. They will no longer be a part of your program. Kemp Sheffield is running out of NCAA eligibility as well. So there are 3 spots there that open up. Obviously, we're forecasting 4-year careers for these guys, but there's no world in which Cameron Boozer comes back for his sophomore season for Duke. Dame Sarr is long been projected to be a top 10 lottery pick type player going into next season. A lot of people believe this is it for Isaiah Evans before he heads off to the NBA. And then in the recent way too early mock drafts, right after it ended, we saw both Hamenia and Ngangba in early mocks. So who knows what type of years they will have. What we're seeing here, Kevin, is if you agree with me, looks like there's going to be a ton of opportunities for Duke to add players.
Yeah, JJ, if I'm going down this list, and obviously don't hold me to these predictions, but I mean, obviously look at the seniors. Malik Brown will be gone. I think Caleb Foster, if you're trying to pencil his name into 26, 27, I think just to be safe, you have to put a question mark there because who knows? And I think the same with Darren Harris. Not for Darren Harris to be going to the NBA draft, but I think if he doesn't get a lot of playing time this year, could he be a guy who heads in the transfer portal? You mentioned Isaiah Evans and Pat Gongba. I think Isaiah Evans, a lot of people, it's the expectation that this is his final year and he goes to the NBA. Pat Gongba, if he has a really good sophomore season, he could be on an NBA roster next season. Cam Boozer, that goes without question. Seems like he is going to be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft in June. I think Caden Boozer, I think he would be one of the biggest question marks, at least right now. Is he going to be a multi-year player? Can he be the Duke basketball point guard as a sophomore? That's a major question. Nicholas Hamenia. I think when we're going through some of these predictions of how players are going to perform this season, Hamenia is kind of a guy people are on the fence about. Some people think he could have a really big season. Some people think maybe he'll be an Isaiah Evans type and a sophomore year would benefit him the most. And Dame Sarr, a guy that I think people, if he were to enter the NBA draft this past year, some people thought he could have been a first-round pick. So those people definitely think he could be a first-round pick next year. And then Sebastian Wilkins, I think a lot of people do expect him to be sticking around this program for at least a couple of years and be back for a sophomore season. So, I mean, pending which way the ball goes, you could be looking at least 8 open spots for this Duke team next season.
Yep, and obviously this is where we do not have any recruits or commits right now in the freshman class, so they would count towards those 8 there, depending on how many Duke takes. But does feel like the transfer portal could absolutely be a move that Duke utilizes come the end of the season. Although if we've got a big Final Four run, once again, Duke was a little late. They were so focused on their team this year, and rightfully so. And Duke and Jon Scheyer wanted to prioritize retention of his players and that sort of thing. That's the one part of the calendar they got to fix. But we'll save that problem for another day here on the show. Last kind of Duke basketball thought to touch on with you, Kevin, while we're talking. Emanuel Dildy has been added as an associate head coach now to his title after 2 years serving on staff with Jon Scheyer. Another guy that comes from outside of the brotherhood, but seems pretty clear that he's making a bit of an impact.
No, certainly making a major impact within the program, and just another promotion and switch of a title for someone on the coaching staff. I don't know if Jon Scheyer could have predicted he would have this much change and turnover in a short tenure as a head coach with his coaching staff, but so far he's navigated it very well. And I'm interested to see what the additions and subtractions, how that all pans out throughout the course of a season this upcoming year.
Yeah, you just look at the success that Duke's had, and if it continues, like we talked about on yesterday's show, Emanuel Dildy's just 44 years old, right? So he's still relatively young, just 6 years older than Coach Scheyer. He's thought of as one of the top assistants in the sport, so I'm sure there could be many programs that want to give him a call. Chris Carrawell is just 5 years beyond that. He's 49. If there's still head coaching dreams for Sewell, that would sting for Duke to lose him with how great he's been for this program over the last several seasons. But when you find success, people want to try to take pieces out of your DNA and kind of replicate it elsewhere. So I think it's just a kind of sign of the great things that Jon Scheyer and this program continue to do. I mean, Coach K's got a big coaching tree for a reason. So many coaches that were on his staff because others left because they got head coaching opportunities.
Yeah, and Jon Scheyer knows what he wants in an assistant coach because he was an assistant coach for so long. He knows he's looking. He has the qualities and characteristics that he's looking for when he interviews some of these prospective coaches, and obviously people give him referrals on who they think would be a really good fit. So he's done a good job so far, and I would imagine he's going to continue to keep doing a good job to fill out and build out his staff, however the chips may fall throughout the rest of his career.
All right, so Duke basketball, some big recruiting news, and again, happy to see Emanuel Dildy promoted to associate head coach. It's Duke football week now as the Blue Devils prepare to take on Elon on Thursday night, a little Thursday night football action in the college world. We dive into that here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Today is the day. Today is FanDuel Futures Day as it's August 26th, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or just ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. Go check it out right now. Look at the MVP race, some of the top odds that are out there between the likes of quarterbacks when you've got Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. Maybe it's Saquon Barkley who puts together another impressive campaign out of the running back position. Get in on the action now with FanDuel Futures Day. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets right now because FanDuel Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, win the day, as FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Also want to let you know about our new Locked On listener survey, an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. Locked On Blue Devils is a proud sponsor or a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, my guy Kevin Connelly's here. We're going to talk a little Duke football now. Game week has arrived. What a good feeling it is, Kevin. Thursday night, Duke taking on Elon, a team they beat last season 26-3 in the opener. Incredibly rare when you kind of go back and look at Duke football to have the same first game opponent in consecutive years. But that's what we've got here to open up the second season of Manny Diaz run as head coach.
Yeah, and it's a season that has a lot of expectations. I think some people are expecting Duke to be one of the top-tier programs in the ACC. Can they fight and claw their way to a spot in the ACC title game? I think that's a long way off. But certainly a game against Elon, you want to get your legs under you. You don't want to treat it necessarily like a preseason game in the NFL, but I think it's certainly better to get one of these week 0 or week 1 games against a quote-unquote mid-major and bye game and a team that you should dominate as a near 5-touchdown favorite.
Yeah.
And I think for Duke fans tuning in, I think it's pretty nice that they're playing on a Thursday night because obviously we know there's some really big-time games on the college football calendar on Friday and Saturday. So you can focus on those big-time matchups, hopefully with a win under your belt already against Elon. And then you're looking forward to the rest of the games in the early Duke football season schedule because, you know, that next game is a big one. Illinois is a really, really good team. And I don't think people necessarily equate Illinois football with being really good. But I think it's a noon start next Saturday at home. So hopefully Wallace Wade gets packed, gets rowdy, and Duke's able to pick up an early non-conference signature victory on their schedule.
That's a good point. When you look at just this game being on Thursday and what's to come this weekend, going into Labor Day weekend, it also gives you a little bit more time to clean up what you did or didn't like about this Elon game. Again, Duke is favored on FanDuel right now by 33.5 points over the Phoenix. So you've got a few extra days before next Saturday when that Illinois game comes around. And then for us, the fans, to your point, Friday night in the sport, you've got Auburn and Baylor. This weekend's also going to feature LSU versus Clemson. Texas and Ohio State are going head-to-head. Then you've also got a big game like Miami and Notre Dame. Obviously, going into Monday, Bill Belichick's debut at North Carolina against TCU. So you don't have to worry about the Duke game conflicting with any other things that you want your full attention on as Duke will play here on Thursday night. And we'll officially see the debut of Darian Mensah. You go out and you invest in a quarterback. Now it's here. Now he's here. Now he's ready to make some big-time plays, and we'll see what Mensah's made of.
Yeah, and JJ, I think when you compare at least the first 2 seasons of Manny Diaz, and obviously he didn't have a major impact on what the schedule looked like last year because, as you know, these football games are set years in advance.
No doubt.
Duke did have Elon, and then they did go on the road to face a Big Ten opponent in week 2 against Northwestern and came out with a double overtime victory. But the beginning of the schedule was a lot softer than it is this year. You look at Elon, the road game against Northwestern. You got Connecticut at home, a game where Duke really didn't play that great, only winning by 5. And then you went on the road to Middle Tennessee, which was a blowout victory for Duke against a quality mid-major opponent most seasons before getting into ACC play. This year is much different. You still have that bye game with Elon as your opener, but just highlighted that Illinois game, 12th ranked in the preseason AP poll coming into Wallace Wade. So that's a really big game. And then I think a game that's going at least under the radar right now, at least nationally, because it's not that sexy to talk about. Duke at Tulane, obviously Darian Mensah coming from Tulane, that being a Saturday night under the lights, an 8 p.m. Eastern start on ESPN. That's a big-time game that Duke's going to have to be ready for. And then they go right into ACC play with Syracuse and then back-to-back, or with NC State and then back-to-back road games against Syracuse and Cal. So this is going to be a Duke team that has a lot of expectations on them. But after this weekend against Elon, they're really getting thrown into the fire, something they didn't do last year. They were able to get their feet wet a little bit before jumping into ACC play. So it's going to be interesting to see how Manny Diaz has this team fired up coming out of the gates, because it is going to be a lot more difficult than they faced a year ago.
Yeah, we'll see how it all comes together. We'll see action on Thursday night as Duke gets set to open up the season against Elon. Kevin, I know that you do great work there with your team at Ball Durham, not only talking about basketball, not only giving folks the Austin Goosby updates of the world, but you've also got football coverage as well. Tell us about the great work at Ball Durham and how people can get plugged in.
Yeah, we got everything you want on Duke Athletics over at balldurham.com. Well, we're completely on top of the football season as well as basketball. Just had the first team workout the other day, first day of classes. So they're back on campus ready to go. So we got all that over at balldurham.com. Best way to consume us is reading us over at balldurham.com every single day.
Good to see you, Kevin. We'll talk again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked on Blue Devils. Always great to see our guy Kev and the coverage that he helps bring here to the show. Shout out to all the everydayers that we've got. Thank you for making Locked on Blue Devils your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, go check out the Portal Show and Locked on College Basketball. Be sure to subscribe to us wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review, and subscribe to us on YouTube. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you, and good day.